Hello and welcome to Moonshot, a show by Sequoia India and Southeast Asia that profiles innovative startups and inspiring founders who are dreaming big, making an impact, and driving change across the region. I'm your host, Dewi Fabri, and throughout this podcast, we'll be introducing you to founders and thought leaders who are helping shape the region's startup ecosystem. We hope this podcast will give you fresh ideas on how to start and scale an enduring company. India's e-commerce space is expanding rapidly as millions of people come online for the first time every year, thanks to affordable mobile phones and data plans. In 2017, e-commerce platform Meesho, which is an abbreviation of My Shop or Meri Shop in Hindi, was launched. The platform is on a mission to help small business owners digitize and allow sellers to list their goods, process orders, track payments, and manage inventory. On this episode of Moonshot, Meesho's CEO and co-founder Vidit Atre chats with Mohit Bhatnagar, managing director at Sequoia India, about how the startup is lowering barriers to entry for millions of merchants across India by making e-commerce more affordable, and how Vidit has evolved Meesho's organizational structure as the company scales. This conversation took place during a session at Surge, our rapid scale-up program for early-stage startups.
Hi, everyone. And awesome to see you here, Vidit. Welcome. I actually have great pleasure in introducing my buddy and my friend Vidit and the co-founder of Meesho. Vidit, along with Sanjeev, all the way back in 2015. Sanjeev is Vidit's co-founder, started Meesho. And the vision for Meesho is to democratize e-commerce so that it's available to everyone. The company itself is well on its way of doing that. We have at last count, and maybe it's increased, already about 25 to 26 million people who shop on Meesho every month. Meesho delivers products across 5,000 plus cities, towns, small villages of India, across 25,000 pin codes. So already, to give you a sense of what that scale is that they've achieved in the last 5 years, Zomato, which is our leading food delivery company in India, has about 15 million people who buy from them every month. So, clearly in a very short period of time, Meesho has been able to build a brand for a lot of buyers around the e-commerce platform. So with it, before we go into these massive insights around Meesho and all the lessons you've learned while you're building it, super important for folks to know you, get to know you as a person and understand where you're coming from so that they can just sort of put things in context. So for everyone's benefit, Vidit, if I may, grew up in a typical middle class upbringing in Delhi. Delhi is in the northern part of India. His dad, by the way, and I got to know this 2 years back when he was visiting us, spent the better part of his life, and I think over 25 to 30 years working for the same company, which is the Delhi Jal Board. And for those that are not in India, that's the water utilities for this part of the country. And his mom is a homemaker. With it, I actually don't know if you had siblings and whether you grew up with any, but would love to sort of have folks just understand those early years and especially talk a little bit about stuff that sort of shaped you.
Yes, no, lots and lots of interesting stories there. And my dad worked at Delhi Jal Board for almost 40 years, right? So I can't even imagine people doing that anymore. But he started his career in the same place and then got retired in the same place. So it's crazy. Yeah, so basically I come from a family of farmers. So like both my mom and dad, entire family is full of farmers. Like my dad, I think, was the first person from the family to ever go out of the village. All my cousins are still back farming. So, and now even after retirement, like the thing that he likes doing now is back farming. So yeah, I think it's a very, very different worldview. And even when I was growing up in Delhi, I was growing up in like Rohini, which is Northwest. It's not as much Delhi when I was growing. I don't think I ever spent enough time beyond that Northwest part of Delhi. So I think, yeah, being there from the kind of family you come, like shapes you in many ways. Everything starting with aspirations. And when I was growing up in Rohini, I think the only thing I could see around is people either running these shops or people working in government jobs, right? So I knew that I don't want to sit in a shop and like sell products every day. So I thought like, hey, eventually I will take up a government job. My dad kept pushing me, hey, study, so you can eventually become an IS officer. So I think that was what shaped me for a very long time. And that's what I saw around me. And I think everything changed for the first time when I think I went to IIT, right? I think I got exposed to so many things. Like I realized I never knew that people come to an engineering college and start companies. Like all of this was so new to me in so many ways. And I think just getting exposed to all of this in the first few years started to shape my ambition as well. I think after first 2 years, I just went to my dad and said, hey, like the whole plan of becoming an IS officer is gone. Like I just realized there's so many possibilities in the world. So I don't think I ever aspired that I would do something like this. The thing I started to feel like, hey, I want to be part of something really big. I want to be in a place where I can create a lot of impact. That decided the kind of job I took after college. I graduated, I joined ITC, I came to Chennai, had a very different experience, realized a lot of my friends are part of these tech companies in Bangalore, and they're somehow enjoying what they're doing quite a lot. Like every time you speak to them, they'll talk about how things are just going up really fast. They're doing this, they're doing that. Like everything is so cool. So I said, I don't want to be part of this traditional company. So I asked someone to refer to me some company, and I joined this company called InMobi, right? And I remember I came here in Bangalore, I think in 2014. And I think that 1 year after that was very different and extremely special because I got introduced to an ecosystem for the first time.
What were you doing there with it? What were you working as?
So the role was called strategy and operations, kind of a chief of staff role to the chief revenue officer then. And I think the reason I took up that role because I had no idea what do I want to do. All the roles that were part of this were very different. The beautiful thing about that role was that I could see everything end to end. Like you see tech, you see product, you see sales, you see, like there's nothing that you don't touch. So I was part of that role for about a year and learned so much, like crazy amount of learning in a single year. And I think the thing that happened, which was the most important is I realized during that year that if these guys can do it, then why can't I? Because I could find people who are like me, who are not 60 years old, at the top, like people who are young, started this like few years ago, have been able to scale this up. It's not that they were born with a silver spoon, that they had money to start this business. They went out to these professionals who could give you money to start a company, right? So again, big inflection point because I just saw people like me doing this, people with similar backgrounds and so on, 6 to 8 months into the job. And then I realized, hey, everything else is gone. I'm going to start up. Now I need a tech co-founder because I was not coding. So then I started to reach out to all my techie friends and I'll ping them and ask them to come have dinner or lunch with me. And I will take these guys and I'll keep convincing them that we should start up. And I think I did that for like few months. And even then, like, because I was part of this, I could see a lot of them were like part of traditional companies again, like Microsoft and so on. They didn't want to take risks. Someone wants to get married. Someone wanted to do something else. So I struggled and I was trying to figure out what to do because I'm not getting someone to work with me. And I think, and that's where serendipity plays so much role, right? Like, this story is still mind-boggling to me. Like one particular event decided whether we start the company or not. And if that hadn't happened, I don't know what I would be doing today. So I was in office and randomly I get a call from Sanjeev, and Sanjeev and I used to be part of the same hostel in the same department college. After 3 years, he was working with Sony in Tokyo. So after 3 years, he calls me, like out of the blue, right? And he said, hey, I'm bored with working in this traditional company. Things move very slow. I want to be part of, again, the cool thing, which is being part of the tech ecosystem, being part of the startup. I'm thinking of joining one particular company he mentioned that time in Bombay. Can you do a ref check? Because I haven't been in Delhi for a long time. So I just told him on call, okay, why do you want to join this company? Why don't you start up? I like spent a few minutes convincing him. He said, fine. Next day I resigned. He resigned. 2 weeks later, we took some place in Kormangala.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you even know what he was resigning for to start up? Or he had no idea?
Both of us had no idea. So we said, we'll come together and figure out what to do.
Amazing. That's crazy, dude. That's crazy.
And if that call hadn't happened, like I just sometimes think what would have happened. I have no idea, by the way. Like,
that's crazy. And then you guys went on to start Fashioneer. The highly successful Fashioneer. I spoke to Sanjeev and he told me about Estilo Canta. You remember that, I bet. Tell the guys a little bit about those early days when you and Sanjeev said, let's do this. And then Estilo Kanta came into your life.
It's quite crazy. So what happened was like we got together and then we said we have to figure out what to do. So we created an Excel sheet of like problems that we want to work on. And we said the framework is very simple. So anything that we work on should satisfy these two things. One is it should be really large for us to get inspired by that problem for a very long time. And second, it should be a problem that I can connect with and he can connect with. And that's very, very important. Like, because if you work for someone else that you can't relate with, I don't think it can be very inspiring that you will give everything that you have to work towards it. So basically we just said this. So we create an Excel sheet of things that we think are problems around us. Eventually we landed on this one. So we said, if you look around, I could see so many small businesses. We were in Kormangla in Bangalore. So many small businesses around me. I couldn't find a single one that was selling online. And this is 2015, like some e-commerce companies in India have been there for about 7-8 years. But none of the shops I could find around me was selling online. It just meant, it was weird to me. Like, how can these guys not go online? Everyone is eventually going online. So we said there's something structurally wrong because everything that you can find online at that point in time was big brands, electronics, white goods, branded fashion, and most of it is that's it. Everything else was primarily offline there. So we said, we will solve this. We'll bring every small business online.
And just for everyone's context who's not in India, by this time, Flipkart has raised billions and billions of dollars. Amazon, the big bad Amazon, has decided that India is their market that they're going to make sure they never miss because, they miss China. And so you've already had a fist fight of, epic proportions where these two companies have been trying to win e-commerce in India and are firmly now established as the incumbents. So here comes Vidit and Sanjeev, who've never done the E of e-commerce before, but want to change the world.
Yeah, it's quite crazy. And I think you can only do it when you're 24-year-old, like not think about how so much and just do it. You start to become more reasonable as you age. So basically what we did, we said we have to bring these small businesses online. So we started to go to all of these shops. We'll go to all shops that we could find around us. We'll go to them and ask them, why you're not selling online? Like simple. And after spending a lot of time, we realized these guys say that all of my customers in this locality, why would people beyond would buy from me? So I would want to sell to people in this community only. So we said, why don't we help you acquire more consumers in this particular community in your locality? And that's when we started Fashion Nearby. So on an app, you could see all shops close to you. We launched it 6 months down the line, realized it doesn't work because for the customer, it's not a very great experience. You can't see a lot of selection. You can't get access to a lot of deals. When people buy online, that's one of the big things that are required. So we shut it down. Then we go back to the shops again. We said we have to figure out something else that we can solve for them. And I think that's where Estilo Kanta comes in. So it's like a very small shop that sells unbranded t-shirts to men.
4 t-shirts for $6.99 or something killer like that.
Correct. Like super crazy cheap. And so basically at that time, we realized we're not going to ask them about problems because people don't know what to say. So this time we will go and ask these shopkeepers, hey, we will just sit on the side and observe you. We will not bother you. We'll just observe you from the side. Please let us be here and you keep doing your work. So we used to sit. So we used to go to our random shop in a small business shop and we used to just sit on the side and observe everything that this person is doing. When people walk in, what do they do? So we spend time and we realize there's one pattern which is happening again and again. So in this shop, which is Estilo Kanta, we realize that people will walk into the shop, pick up a product, go to the counter, ask this person, hey, I want this, give the money, collect the product. After this, the shopkeeper will say, hey, also give me a WhatsApp number. I will add you to my WhatsApp group because this is where I send all the new selection I get in my shop. So and he was doing it every single time. So at the end of the day, we went to the shopkeeper and asked him, why do you do this? I've never seen this happen anywhere else before. Simple. Why do you do this? He says, my brother told me. He runs a shop in Whitefield. He figured this out that, hey, many of these customers never come back. They come, visit once, buy something, and then go away. So a good way to re-engage these consumers is add them to the WhatsApp group. Every single time I get new selection in my store, share on this WhatsApp group. Many people just buy it here. Then I send the chotu from my shop to their house, collect the money, transaction is done. Estilo Kanta guy said, I'm doing 40% of my total sales on WhatsApp. And basically that was mind-boggling to me. we just see, like someone is selling products on WhatsApp and almost half of their business is on WhatsApp. So it's like an opportunity that some people know about, most people don't. So we said, why don't we solve this? Like, why don't we create a product that every small business is able to grow their business by leveraging these social platforms? This will also be the first way that they will go online. So again, we were solving the same problem that we started with. Can we do this? Then we created the first version of Meesho. Meesho meant my shop put together, Meri shop put together into a single word. We said, we will give you a shop. We will build neat integration with social platform. And we will go and tell them, okay, why don't you use this app to re-engage with your customer, remarket to them and grow your sales? Because see, success stories of these people have grown their business by leveraging this. Simple. We did this for 2, 3, 4 months and realized they started to grow. Like a lot of people are intrigued. So they'll download the app, use it for a few weeks, and then the retention starts to go down again. Like a lot of people would do this. So we said, it's not working again. What's happening? But we again found something, which is there are certain users on the app, very small, but certain users on the app who are using the app day in, day out, like crazily. They come to the app in the morning and they stay until the evening and they keep doing this again and again and again and again. It was very weird. So I said, who are they? So I figured out all of them are women. All of them were women. So I reach out to them. I used to, at that time, by the way, stay in touch with all of our users who are using our app on WhatsApp. So all of them were women, all of them were homemakers, and all of them will say that I'm running my boutique in WhatsApp. And first of all, when someone will say something like this to you, it won't make sense to you. Like, what does WhatsApp boutique mean? And then I went and met many of them in Bangalore, right? And they'll spend hours and hours talking about the story. And I think that's when the eureka moment happens, right? Like you realize a problem which you feel inspired by, which is extremely large, and say, okay, I will leave everything else in life and just do this day in, day out. Because all of the stories were exactly the same. Their stories will go like this. Okay, hey, I'm very educated. I'm very ambitious. I used to work before I got married or I had kids. After that, to take care of the family, I gave up my profession. But now I don't have an identity of my own. So I've been trying to start a business from home for a very long time. And I knew that I have a good sense in fashion. So we said, I wanted to start a boutique. Some of them realized that now a Flipkart and Amazon in India are basically running their business without having no inventory. Why can't I do the same thing? Which is, I will create this WhatsApp group, add all my potential neighbors, my potential customers who are mostly neighbors, friends, and family onto that group. This time I'll go to a Chandni Chowk. Instead of buying these products, I will just take WhatsApp numbers of all of these shopkeepers, come back and ask them to keep sending me newer products. And on a daily basis, I'll curate it on WhatsApp with my customer base. Whenever they buy, I let the shopkeeper know to directly drop ship it to the consumer, and I make some margin in between. So she basically created her own marketplace, like her own small marketplace. And she is running a boutique now on WhatsApp. She's making money, and not getting access to capital is no more a blocker in her life, right? Which means she can now realize all her dreams. Now, doing this on WhatsApp, by the way, back then was extremely cumbersome. Like collaborating with these shopkeepers, doing it herself here. So she went online and said, sell on WhatsApp, sell on something to find something that will help her. And the only app available online was Meesho that we had built for these offline businesses.
And how many of these folks do you have now on the platform?
We have now 15 million of them in a matter of 5 years.
And obviously now you're not going and talking to them. So how are you being able to keep the pulse?
I'm still connected with a lot of them on WhatsApp. I still speak to them very often. Like just yesterday, I think I had some 4 conversations with some of our consumers and entrepreneurs, and everyone will, by the way, spend like half an hour, 45 minutes with me and tell me everything. And I think that's the thing I enjoy the most also, right? Like when you speak to them and you understand those insights, that we go back and build something very valuable on. By the way, it's part of the culture, it's just not me. Like if you say, it's part of the entire company. And we always made sure that the friction in reaching out to users was always very low. The first thing that anyone who joins the company, even today in the company, irrespective of what role, engineer, non-engineer, the first thing before you can get to job is you have to speak to like some 10, 20, 30 users and basically submit a report of what insights you got. You can't do anything in the company before that. What it does is it also makes people who have never spoken to users before at least get over that line of hesitation. Okay, I don't know if I can do it, because that's the first thing that they have to do. But I think that culture has stayed since we started, because I think that's the core of all the insights we figured out and innovated on.
That's awesome with it. That's a super story. Thanks. This early period of trying to get product market fit, this early period of really finding out, what your own true, authentic, and deep insights are, sort of stand the test of time. This is when you get confused later on, and there's competition coming left, right, and center, trying to sort of outspend you or outmaneuver you. In many ways, this is sort of the core learning that nobody else can take from you, to really go back to and build products and sort of scale up there. So with it, I'm going to ask you one question last on this PMF part, and then maybe we'll move to other issues you're now facing as a larger organization, which is, when did you actually know you had PMF? And when you got the PMF, did you ever sort of lose it and have to go reestablish it?
I think the way to think about it is, like, all of us think that PMF is some binary stage. Either you have it or you don't have it. I have realized you always start to have some weak PMF and you have to make it stronger and stronger, right? And that's the stage all of us go to. Like, I've never seen something happens. Obviously, you will see step changes, but even after step changes, you get to a weak PMF and you have to keep making that flywheel better and better so that people come and prefer you of any other platform. So I think that's how I saw it. But if I go back to our own story, after speaking to some of these women, we came back and we said, forget all of these offline businesses. We'll enable like 100 million women in India to start their own business and basically become independent and have their own professional identity. Like, very, very clear. And we just let go of everything else. And then we said, we want to first test this. So we created this WhatsApp group, added these women, and we said, we will give you everything that you need to become a great WhatsApp boutique owner. Access to supply, access to logistics, access to payment, simple. And we used to send it to them by forwarding things on WhatsApp. And we realized the retention, by the way, was 100% day on day. And people will ping you multiple times a day. There's no app, there's no website, nothing. Extremely bad experience, lots of friction. They'll still come back to you. We did this for 3-4 months. And I think until then, everyone got convinced, hey, this is going to work. So we again created an app only focused on these women and killed the other product. And then I think the thing that happened, we launched our product, by the way, in March or April of 2017. We raised our first round, I think 6 months later. We spent 0 rupees in marketing because we had no money. We ran out of everything that we had. So no money. We doubled every month. And I think that's when we knew we have something, at least a weak version of PMF. We obviously have to do a lot, but now we are solving a core problem for someone. One thing that we used to do in the beginning is, because we said we don't know what's working and what's not. So we used to do every single thing ourselves, because we believed every single thing that we do is a touch point where we get feedback. So in the beginning, we used to take photographs ourselves, like full day. Every single order I used to deliver on my bike, right? Like every single order, like morning to evening. And we used to alternate, because every single time we get to the customer, they will tell us something which they won't otherwise on a call. So we just wanted access to every information. So we are able to get to that product faster, right? We can iterate very fast. So access to that user feedback, we always valued from day one.
I want to move the conversation forward to business strategy. And I want to pick one aspect of it that I think Meesho really underlines, and that is price. See, in our part of the world, you can almost think of price as a commodity, something that you can, drop prices to win. And people almost feel like it is one of the many things that people do in terms of discounts and incentives and so on and so forth. But I want to put out a little bit of a theory that a lot of companies here in this part of the world are actually built because they can create a massive differentiation because of their lean and mean cost structures, because of how they think about price. And if they can actually offer the same high quality product or service at a price point that others can't, it suddenly opens up the underbelly of a market that others have ignored forever. And in a similar fashion, you're not going to hear, I'm going to ask Vidit, maybe we should talk a little bit about this. I love your clarity of thought when you say price greater than convenience, and explain that and why you've taken that strategy to beat your incumbents.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a journey. It's been a journey since we started. I think one like single attribute that we've always had is we always knew that some point in time we're going to go and compete with companies who are going to have a lot of resources. So if we start to build everything out and compete with incumbents and so on, it will be almost impossible. We can't do it. So one thing that we always valued internally is immense amount of focus. We don't do 10 things. We always do a single thing, right? So we keep asking, like, what is one thing that if you change for your customer, everything else they will live with for some time again, right? People had been investing like some hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe more than that, like every month, just around solving this. Okay, how do we activate the next 100, 200 million people? We said, we can't do 100 things. We have to do only one. Like, what does it take to solve for this? And we realized that the kind of products and selection, because small businesses were not online, the kind of selection that was available online, most consumers who are the next 200, 500 million potential shoppers online just couldn't afford that selection. So they would come, maybe look at this price, look at this product, maybe buy a Xiaomi phone once in a while, but everything else always seemed unaffordable to them. So you can solve 100 problems for them, but that doesn't get solved, which is affordability. So we said, why things are unaffordable for so many people? Like after e-commerce have been there for about a decade in India. And we realized that e-commerce in India started by serving the top 4-6 cities and the top 5% population. So all the design decisions in the ecosystem that were done were to serve that customer base, to solve for their NPS, to solve for the expectations that they have, everything. And now you take the same product and you want everyone else in India to buy from the same product. And serving that particular customer, who is mostly you and me, is much more expensive because all of us have very different service needs. But if you go to the next 500 million, a billion consumers, the expectation that they have in terms of services is very different. But the thing they care a lot more about is affordability because they have very, very limited means. So we said that we will remove all of these frills that exist today in the ecosystem, like every single thing, and we will challenge everything. And we did this, by the way, not for a month, not for 2 months, not for a year. We've been doing this consistently every month for the last 2-3 years. That's all we do. We go and figure out what is that thing that they don't need, and we unbundle it out and make the product more affordable for them. Many people think, hey, the customer won't come back, and they come back more and more often. The retention only goes up every quarter, right? So I think that amount of focus brings that clarity, and to question things that were otherwise not questioned, people gravitating to those fancier answers of solving this problem, whereas the core is something else.
And with it, maybe just one more line around your zero commission as a strategy for that, right? To try and make it a scalable differentiator over time.
Correct. So we said another big thing that has been added, like you have all of these costs, and to fund these costs, like before us, a lot of e-commerce companies are there in India, they will charge 20, 30, 40% commission. If you go back and look at it, it's not that they make crazy amount of margin. Their contribution margin is still negative in most places. So people are charging so much commission because the cost structure is like so loaded. We said we will remove all of these costs and not charge a single rupee of commission, and hence the product would become much, much more affordable to this consumer as compared to what it was earlier. We did that, and you saw people coming in plenty from everywhere in the country. So zero commission is one of them, like removing a lot of these services that were given for granted before to people. So many other things. I think we just kept going after them. And we see that people reward us every single time. Like every single time we do something which is very counterintuitive, people come back to us.
Great. With it, let's dovetail this and maybe anything else on your mind around into organization design. One of the things you've done quite different is organize people around these metrics, as you tell me. And you and I have actually debated this. I'm not even completely sure I completely get it fully. So maybe using this cost and removing frills from every part, having the crystal clear clarity around the 4 or 5 metrics that are the most important for your business, and then more importantly, organizing around those. Talk a little bit about how you've designed that.
It's a thing that I spent most amount of my time on, right, in the last few years in solving for this problem. And I think it's still a journey. But if I look back, so basically one thing that I realized is most people want to solve problems, but most of their organizations are designed on solutions. You have a head of marketing, you have a head of, like, for example, supply chain, you have a head of XYZ. All of these are solutions to solve this problem. And then someone has to do something to say, who will come together to solve this problem? And then there's so much of this communication gap that happens. So the thing that we have done is our entire organization, by the way, is aligned around problems. So we have a value which is called problem first mindset. Every single person is aligned on our problem. Their job title, their role talks about the problem they have and not the solution. How you do it doesn't matter. We took that decision, I think about 2.5 years ago. It took a while for people to become okay with this. But once the organization also becomes problem first and you're trying to solve problem, the amount of velocity, by the way, you get and the amount of alignment that you get is crazy because everyone talks in the same language. Hey, you're solving this problem. I'm solving this problem. Let's do what we can do together. Rather than saying, hey, this is my job. My job is PR. Someone's job is marketing. Someone's job is this. This is what I do. If something related to this, I'll do it. Otherwise, I won't.
Vidit, make this real for us. So there are short-term problems. There are longer-term problems. There are, problems that need, individuals. Then there are problems that need, a large part of the organization to execute. How do you make these different pods who are working on these independent, somewhat isolated problems sort of come together?
Yes. So by the way, one thing that I hate generally is collaboration. So I feel like collaboration requires a lot of time, takes away a lot of time for people. I hate collaboration, the need for collaboration rather than the quality of collaboration, right? So I've always believed in organizing people so that the need for collaboration is very low. Like I have a problem, I have all the resources that are required to execute and achieve this problem and I'm done. Like forget everything else. We'll obviously have some ways of knowing what other people are doing. So silos are not there, but I don't want a lot of collaboration to happen all the time. So I think that's just one principle. Now, let me bring this to reality, right? Like how we do it. So the way we have organization designed, so we have 5 GMs in the company, like 5 general managers, all of them are aligned to the problem. So one problem is number of users on the platform transacting. One problem is number of sellers on the platform transacting. Third problem is number of orders per customer on the platform, which is the customer frequency. Fourth is cost. And fifth is monetization. So these are the 5 GMs I have. And these, by the way, are problems. At the beginning of the year, we take what we call as BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. All of these guys take one, simple. They have to take it themselves. Like no one is going to come and impose it on them. Again, we have one value, which is called Think 10X. Like we reward people who take larger goals rather than people who meet goals. So in our company, it's perfectly fine if you don't meet a goal. Like no one is going to come after you and say, hey, you did not achieve it. But the thing that we reward and recognize is when people take unreasonable goals, like something which is unprecedented. When you take it, everyone's going to come to you, okay, very inspiring, thank you for doing this. So these 5 folks will take unreasonable goals for themselves at the start of the year and do what we call as a broad plan of how they will achieve it. These are not OKRs, but these are broad plan of how they will achieve it. And that particular team is always self-staffed so that they don't have to collaborate with anyone else to do this. So we don't have like people shared across multiple orgs ever for any role. Like redundancy is totally fine. Like we'll have 2 people doing the same job across 2 orgs. Even if they have no other work, they will chill and no problem.
Actually, so that's an important point, right? With it, this is the design choice you've made. You grew your number of monthly buyers 10x last year in a COVID year. And that was after you grew crazily the year before. And I know your BHAG for this year, which is nuts again. So speed sounds like a very big beneficiary from the way you've organizationally designed, but it may not be the most efficient. Fair?
Exactly. So again, it comes from the same thing, which is speed over efficiency. One of the values for us. So the org is again for design for the same thing. Okay, now massive amount of focus, very less collaboration required. Everything that I have is here. I don't have to stand in front of someone's queue to get something that I have getting prioritized. None of that ever exists, because the organization is designed so that all of that is avoidable.
But to be fair, someone like Sanjeev would manage a lot of the engineering talent across, right? And they would still be attached to these 5. There would be some horizontal, to be fair.
So we have horizontals, but their job on us horizontals is to enable the leaders to achieve their goals. They don't get their own OKRs also, by the way, to make sure there's no divergence. So no horizontal leader can ever have their own OKRs, because if they have OKR, their own OKR takes precedence over where the team is. So their goal mostly is staffing, growing people, right? And basically enabling people to achieve their goals. And they're part of problem solving, everything they're doing. So that alignment is very strong. But that's what they're doing. All of these functional leaders are essentially making people part of these orgs And these orgs are always self-sufficient.
With it, other than cost, which we'll have a separate side discussion about, this thing, is any other thing that doesn't work in this org design, like which you feel has been a pain to deal with?
So one con of this model is one which is very apparent, which is efficiency, right? So you can centralize a lot more to save certain cost. Very simple. If you have certain unutilized orgs spread across, then you are spending more than what you would otherwise do. That's a more obvious one. The second, which is a bit less obvious, which is also very important, is because when you put these general managers, these are not specialists, right, owning this. So if you really want a lot of depth, sometime that sacrifice will happen. You really want someone to make a lot of innovation to happen in a particular function. It can become harder because the understanding of this GM in a particular field may not be very high, right? So the way you do it is, again, you put functional leaders next to them in a place where they're able to influence it, right? And I think that's the big change we did. When we started, we said everyone lies here, there's no functional heads. But over time, we realized because you put these general guys at the top, that starts to hurt. So we put these functional leaders who are there as advisors, are like enablers who are helping all of these orgs to achieve their goals. So the element of functional innovation also doesn't take a backseat when you're trying to optimize for so much speed in the org.
Makes sense with it. So we should talk quickly a couple of minutes around, how you define Meesho culture. What do you think is not good about the culture that you would like to fix? And then maybe right at the end, also just talk a little bit about this thing that's top of mind for everybody, which is returning to office, which you've taken a very liberal approach to. So
culture is, I think, a way of life in the organization. How does certain people behave is what culture is. So when the company was very small, people will look at what Sanjeev and I are doing. Why are we doing what we are doing? And people will imitate it. So you will see that everyone behaves in a very similar way. What kind of problems we pick, what kind of problems we don't pick, what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do. So people are seeing us all the time because we're working so close to each other. But what happens as the organization becomes larger, you're not interacting with everyone all the time. Like, people start to make decisions that I would have never made. So then we went back and we said, let's articulate values that are really, really important to us. Simple. That was the first time we articulated culture, and we just told people, what are we okay with? What are we not okay with? How do we make fundamental decisions? And after that, by the way, every year we go back and revise that document because something in the organization has changed. We have evolved. We've learned something new. There's some new attribute that we really want in us. So that's what basically the why of culture, I think, over this time. Now, I think over time, what has happened is it started with this, which is to just make sure I put certain guardrails around people's behavior. At this stage, when you have 2,000 people in the organization, especially when it is remote, how do you make sure that the execution quality in the organization still stays the same as it was 2 years ago? It's very hard, right? Because everyone comes in, they think that something else is important. They're still shaped by the kind of company they were in before. And right now you're hiring so many people that they bring that baggage and they try to kind of work in the same way. So I think today, values and this culture that we have enables me to make sure that we are always a very, very high performance org at all points in time because of this culture. If this culture doesn't exist, like, I won't know what kind of things we will make, build, produce next quarter. Absolutely nothing. So today, the entire execution quality, by the way, depends on this. Because as an organization, because we are very decentralized, we don't have any centralized teams, by the way. Like, there's no centralized team that is creating people's goals. There's no strategy team. There's no any team which is centralized in the company. People take their own goals. They figure it out themselves. Then they execute towards it. And they say, this is what I've done. Like, simple. Everything is self-functioning. And the reason people know what they need to do is because the only thing we value is values. Nothing else. Like, the only thing people are evaluated on at the end of the year, no one writes what goal they had and what did they achieve. The only thing people write is, these were the 9 values you have, and this is what I've done against all of them. Every single thing in the company is optimized so that these people are displaying these values. So who do we celebrate? We don't celebrate people who meet their goals. We celebrate people who take unreasonable goals And even if you achieve an 80% of it, it's totally fine. Because if you achieve 80% of an unreasonable, it's still very, very good. I think, but this is what we have done. Like, to me, the reason values are so important, and I spend so much time in the company on this, because this is the only way I control the quality of execution in the company today.
Awesome. Maybe a quick word on just this getting back to work.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question. And to me, I think we've been asking this question for about a year now. Okay, hey, right now it's sort of hybrid anyways, because you can't ask people to come back. Waves are coming here and there. So people not coming back to office. It's hybrid. And because we haven't taken a position yet, we're still not doing enough to make sure the bonds across the company are very, very strong, even in a remote format. So we went back and said, what do people want? And internally, by the way, we take a lot of pride in being a very people-centric culture. So we don't make decisions top-down around how the policies are. Policies are generally figured out very bottoms up. We obviously have a POV, but we ask people, okay, tell us what do you really want? What kind of environment will help you realize your potential to the fullest? Simple. So what we started to do, we asked people, okay, what do you want? These people said that we want flexibility because the context has changed. They've realized they can be close to their families while working, and their productivity is still very high. Obviously, there are certain cons of work from home, that they're not able to create very strong social bonds in the company and things like that. Those are there, but I'm able to do a lot more in my personal life than I could do before. Second, we realized a lot of great talent suddenly becomes available to you if you are work from anywhere. Like people in small towns in Delhi, in Hyderabad, who are not in Bangalore, are now potential talent for us if we go this way. And we said the first problem is solvable. Like work is happening. We've figured out how to work in this new environment and do really a good job. And again, like internally, we have another value, which is called as Think 10x. Everyone is rewarded for like doing something which is crazy. If it has 1% probability of doing something which is transformative and something that can change. So HR team came up, okay, hey, why don't we make it work from anywhere? We spent a lot of time, asked people in the company, do you want this? People said yes. We said, can we solve the problems I just talked about? The answer is yes. So why not do it? So let's just go out and do it. If it fails, we will learn something. If it doesn't, then we would have changed not just the company, but the entire startup environment for the better in India. So let's do it. Basically, I think that's the process that we went through.
Super. Thanks, Vidit. Heartfelt thank you, Bud, for sharing so openly.
What a phenomenal story of growth with great organizational design choices for startup founders to think about as they grow their own companies. That was Vidit Atre, the co-founder and CEO of Meesho, in conversation with Mohit Bhatnagar, Managing Director at Sequoia India, at Surge, our rapid scale-up program for early-stage startups. I'm Dewi Fabri, and for more interesting startup stories, visit our website, sequoiacap.com, or follow us on your favorite podcast channel.